We asked ChatGPT to build us a 5-day found poetry unit. The irony of AI generating a lesson about found poetry is not lost on us. It got an A in one category and failed everything else. So let's talk about why. We asked ChatGPT to write us a 5-day sequence for found poetry, getting ready for National Poetry Month. So we generated the sequence. What was your reaction to it?
My first reaction was just that there's a lot of material. I don't know that I would be able to get through it in 5 days.
Yeah, let's talk about what it actually gave us here in this sequence. Okay, so as far as learning objectives, understanding the concept of found poetry, identifying poetic elements in non poetic texts, and then creating a first draft of a found poem. So that's what it's
Like
having
day
us
1.
do. Exactly, right? Oh, yeah, that's just the day one learning objectives. Oh my gosh. Okay, so overall, we're going to look at close reading, diction and tone analysis, line breaks and enjambment, voice and perspective, and then revision and reflection. So also quite a lot there to cover in these 5 days. Okay, so maybe let's try just looking at this day by day.
Yeah. I definitely think, like, understanding the concept of found poetry would take a day and
Yeah,
review in order to then identify.
we have this really large day of introducing found
Mhm.
poetry. So,
I just think, like, understanding the concept of found poetry, it's one of 3 learner objectives for day 1 of this sequence, and I think that that would take a full lesson. I can't imagine identifying poetic elements in non-poetic texts and then creating a first draft of a found poem all in one day. That's so much to do in a day.
yeah, it's somehow both too much and not enough at the same
Mm.
time, in my opinion, because it has defining found poetry and then it has examples. So, blackout poetry, cut up poetry, eraser poetry, talking about
Mhm.
choices of a poet, and then choosing multiple texts, choosing from a
Mhm.
set, and then creating a found
Mhm.
poem. That feels like at least 3 days to
Yeah.
me. I feel like this is actually the whole thing maybe. But I do like the idea, like, this has, like, actually taking poems and just, like, cutting them up and rearranging them. I like the
Yeah.
physicality of that, but I feel like before we get to the actual, like, making poems, I'd want them to have more of a, like, objective around it besides just rearranging
Mhm.
words.
Yeah. More background knowledge than like what is the background knowledge that they're bringing to this 5-day sequence? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I would want to do when revising this would be to think about what I want them to do besides the format.
Okay. Yeah.
So if we're thinking about what's the where does this fit inside the unit, I would think about, like, okay, is this going to set up something conceptually, or are we talking about form really, and we want to look at structure
Mhm.
more, or I mean, because the way that this is written, I think it would be fun for sure. Like, students would have fun, like, rearranging the poem, which is important for sure. But I also think for it to not feel like a one off, it would need to have more glue.
Yeah, going back to the core skills developed, word choice is not explicitly in there. Like, it's kind of in there with tone analysis and voice and perspective, but if that's where we're starting, I think, like, what are we really trying to get out of it? I think that's a good question.
I think what I would probably do instead of starting them with actually working with poems or, like, trying to create one, I would have, I would show them some
Oh, yeah, for
poems.
sure.
Yeah. And I think that would help them to understand, like, we could look at those different kinds and understand that this is a subgenre of poetry that we're going to be looking
That
at.
makes sense.
Anything else for day one?
I mean, I love found poetry. I've always wanted to do blackout poetry, so I like this. I mean, I'm just looking at the mini lesson right now. I'm not even looking at the guiding practice. Let me scroll down. Yeah, I mean, it's a good lesson. I just don't know how it would happen in, what do we got here? 40 minutes is what they're planning on. That's a lot. Yeah, that's all.
I think I would either do it the way that we talked about, or I would just have them create something and then go back and do the mini lesson. So, like, it would be like, just what is the objective here? Is it to talk about, like, help students understand more the emotional nature of poetry and just maybe say,
Mm,
rearrange? And I think it goes back to, like, what's the bound here? Like, how are we bounding this lesson? And it could be like, I've seen people do this before where you want to keep the core, like the main
mhm,
idea of the original text, but condense it to a
mhm,
found poem, or taking something that's completely different and then applying it to a text that we're working with
mhm.
now. So it might be like a novel, we're going to make a found poem out
Yeah,
of it. Yeah. Well, regardless, it's too much, and we'd need to kind of think about what we want to do with it before we can really launch in, I
yeah,
think.
agreed.
And then when we move to day two, so in day two, we do this golden shovel poetry, which I think is really cool. So I am not really familiar with golden shovel
Yeah, me
poetry.
neither.
Okay, so my understanding of golden shovel poetry is that it takes pieces of a poem and then those are on like the start instead of having it be line by line. Am I right on that?
Okay. Yeah, so each word of the source text appears as the last word of the line.
So it's kind of like an acrostic, but the end and also found.
Yeah. Like you find one line of poetry that you like or one line of text that you like, and that becomes the last word of each line of your poem.
That's really fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think this would be pretty challenging for
I
students.
agree. 1000%.
I wonder if, well, okay, so I mean, I guess it's like in a way it's similar to using like a rhyme scheme. I'd want to see this in practice to see how easy or difficult it was for students. But I think it would take a minute for even them, and by minute, I mean more than a
Mhm.
minute, to understand even how the poem
Yeah.
works.
I think, like, does it have us looking at the original next to a golden shovel poem? Because I think that would be the only way that I personally like, I mean, I'm looking at what it's got and it's hard for me to comprehend. Like, I would need to see what this actually looks like to really visualize it myself. So I would want to provide that to my students as well. I don't
Yeah, it doesn't have any examples
Yeah,
here.
just introduce it and then model how to do it.
Yeah, okay, so that would definitely be the first thing that I would wanna
Yeah.
do is look at some examples of these golden shovel poems and the original poem and how, because I think it says the poem adds original
Mhm.
content while honoring the source. So that's important, I think, to understand. And without having those models, how do you even show
Yeah.
that?
I do think this something you said reminded me of something that I wrote in my blog post that I'm sharing for the Poetry Fest. Using like this kind of method for other things could be really meaningful. Choose a meaningful line. If you used this to like not necessarily review a text, but like even take notes on something that could be really meaningful for students to remember what they need to remember. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Like,
So
the idea that I'm thinking about is to use Blackout Poetry as like, these are the notes that we took for this concept. And there's a lot of them. So let's black things out and only review the things that are super important. That's something that is like on my to-do list to try. And I think that this could also work for that.
Yeah, it's almost I like that a lot. It's reducing some cognitive load and saying like, okay, what is the actual like really important part to focus
Exactly.
on? Yeah, I also really like the idea of when we do poetry, I think teachers really build it
Hmm.
up in their head about like, we have to make it, I don't know, really academic and it has this high place in our heads. But if we make it more just like we're using this as a tool, it's more of like a really accessible tool that we can
Yeah.
use. I really like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Um, we could also use it as almost like a pre-writing
Mm.
or using it alongside a pre-writing exercise, like taking a line and doing some pre-writing
Hmm.
around it, take another line, doing some pre-writing around it could be a good thing to get them from the original source to this golden shovel
Hmm.
poetry.
Yeah.
So we're already at what, like a 5-day unit and we're on day 2.
That's what I was going to say. Scrolling down to day 3 now.
Interesting. Okay, so now we're at voice, perspective, and ethics of found poetry. I would probably put this earlier. Okay, so analyzing voice and perspective in found poetry, understanding ethical consideration like crediting sources and intention, and revising poetry for clarity and impact. Those are the learning objectives for
Those are
this lesson.
so like such a broad range.
I wonder why it put all of those together. Okay, and also, but though, okay, so in the mini lesson, it has discuss, this is like so broad. Okay, discuss voice versus
Hmm.
source, how context changes meaning, ethical use of text. So making sure that we're crediting sources and respecting sensitive material. And then examining how tone can shift based on word selection and line breaks. So I love all of these
Hmm.
things. But then once we get into the workshop, I don't even feel like this relates to
No,
what is in the mini lesson.
there's no source material at all. It's all students revise.
Yeah. So they're either going to take their day 1 found poem or their day 2 golden shovel poem and
Hmm.
revise. Hmm. Okay. Well, huh. I could see, okay, so if this is gonna be a revision day, I don't know, just pulling one piece of what's in there, revising and looking at these different pieces. So looking at, oh gosh, this is so much. I think what I would wanna do when we first start this, like looking at this mini lesson, is have at the very beginning, when we're talking about found poetry, talking about source material and properly crediting
Yeah.
sources. I feel like that's something that we'd wanna do. I wonder what would we think about, like, respecting sensitive material?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of, really emotional poetry. Is it like, these are somebody's diary entries that we need to respect? I don't know. That is a curious thing.
And also voice versus source.
Mm, yeah.
Maybe hmm, maybe it's like what so going back to the learning objectives, analyze voice and perspective in found poetry. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's saying that you might have a voice and perspective shift when it moves into your found poem because it would be I'm just guessing here. It's just I'm not well, of course it didn't really have an intention. It was just putting words together, but I'm not really sure what this would be. Okay, well, enough trying to figure out what this
What AI is thinking.
what ChatGPT was right, exactly. But I do like this too, like examine how tone can shift based on word selection and line breaks.
Yeah.
I don't think well, okay, I could see that being a separate lesson if that's what the objective was of the work.
Yeah.
So, I think what I would probably do with this is maybe looking at their found poem and thinking about different ways that they might break up
Mm,
their own poem to change the
yeah.
meaning.
Yeah. Or like start with a stream of consciousness and pick out one or two sentences from that. And then how can you turn those one or two sentences into a poem, really a found poem? But that's
But that would make a nice
that's how
that would make a nice starter assignment, like looking at that, and it could be combining our ideas a little bit. It could be taking a line of a poem, doing a stream of consciousness, write about it, and then making a kind of like found or blackout poem based on
Mhm.
that found poem, I guess. And then working on different line breaks
Mm.
and changing the tone around it
Yeah.
and putting that like really like way up at the beginning of the unit. All right. Day 3, that was just kind of a mess, to be honest. All right. So then day 4 of our 20-day unit. Okay. Remixing text, constraints and creativity. So now we're going to do some experimentation with newfound poetry forms. Explore constraints as a creative tool, compare multiple found poetry approaches, and then draft a second found
I thought we
poem,
already had a second
all
found
in
poem.
this day.
I thought we already had two. I'm confused.
This is our third one. Yeah, because we have the first found poem, then the
Mhm.
shovel, which is a found poem, and now we're going to, I guess, write a third, even though it's saying the second one. Okay, so introduce additional found poetry techniques. Okay, blackout
Oh,
poetry, cut up randomized poetry, or Cento style poems.
do you know what
I don't know.
I
What's
don't know.
this? I don't.
See.
From multiple sources, by the way.
Okay. Examples include T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Interesting. All right. And we'll be looking into that a little more later.
Well, okay, so The Wasteland is kind of like a found poem, right?
Yeah, it's a cento poem.
What makes it Cento?
Each line is a line from someone else. We've got Walt Whitman, Ezra Pound, Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, Robert Frost.
Mhm. Okay, so I love The Wasteland, and I've always wanted to incorporate it into a unit, and this is a nice
Yeah, that's really
idea.
interesting.
Mhm. Okay, but it is alongside Blackout
Mhm.
Poetry, cut up randomized poetry, and these Cento style poems. So
Yeah, this is the 8 to 10-minute lesson or mini lesson. Excuse me. Mini lesson. Yeah.
mhm. Okay, so so after we get this 8 to 10-minute lesson where we cover these 3 different styles, including one that's huge, we then create one newfound poem using a different method. And the requirements are that we must transform the original meaning and must include a source note at the bottom. So that is a new criteria for some reason. Like I said, I would put that up at the top.
Yeah, agreed.
And then students leave poems on desk, peers leave. In addition to, wow, okay, so we are going to do a mini lesson. We're going to actually create a found poem and we're going to do a gallery
Yeah,
walk.
I feel like this lesson is really redundant. Like I I mean the Cento style poems, that's new, but we've already talked about blackout poetry. We've really already talked about cut up poetry. So I see what were the objectives? Explore constraints as a creative tool, compare multiple found poetry approaches, and draft a second found poem. I feel like this is, I mean, if we're grading the output again, this is just like meeting the requirements that you gave it of it being a 5-day mini unit because all of this is redundant. We've already written one. We've already talked about half of these techniques. I I like that it has taught me a new style of poetry that I didn't know about, but this is a independent practice day. And yeah, I feel like this day is redundant on the lesson plan.
Yeah. I think like now kind of looking at days 1 through 4, like where I am is doing showing all of these styles at the beginning. So having them do some free writing where they roughly create something that's found and then showing them different styles, choosing one, and then taking that through revision. That's the way that I would
I
restructure
agree.
this
Yeah,
personally.
for sure.
All right, so day 5, what do we have here? Reflection, performance, and meaning. Okay, so this is like a reflection and then reading their poem out loud. Again, I think that this is like pretty redundant. Like, ironically, this lesson is way too long, I think, well, I don't know. This is just do a little bit of reflection, talk about what you've learned, and share.
Mhm.
Oh, it says share out a line
Yeah.
in a craft move they notice.
Right. So they might be sharing. I think you could take this either way. Like, as the teacher, you ask students to share a whole poem, or it could be that someone has shared a poem and they admired this particular line from that person.
The thing though, like, since
I'm looking at this.
yeah, no, I'm just thinking like, go ahead.
I just I wanted to point out, in the warm up, silently reread of, I am thinking, in 5 days, I might be lucky to have my students write a single poem. That's a lot. That's what I picked up on. Your turn.
Well, I'm thinking these are found poems, right?
Mm.
So they might choose a line that wasn't even theirs
Yeah,
as a share out.
yeah.
I like this idea though, and something that could be just one of the earlier getting them primed to do the found poem would be finding a line
Mhm.
that they
Yeah,
like and then just putting their voice in the room and sharing it, and then maybe free writing about that.
yeah. Use that as like a starter, like an engaging, this is how we get into the unit. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then here it says an assessment option would be submitting a mini portfolio of their golden shovel poem.
Mhm,
This is all okay. So it says their one golden shovel poem, their one other found poem in a reflective paragraph. But I thought that in this unit they actually wrote 3
mhm.
poems or 5-day sequence.
Yeah, there's one, yeah, one on day 1, day 2, revise on day 3, but then another on day 4. Yeah.
Okay, so even though we talked a lot about what we didn't like about this unit, I do like a lot of the core ideas around it. And I'm kind of excited to do a little found poetry after looking at
Good.
this. Gonna put this together. Um, all right. Well, let's get to the actual
Mhm,
grading of this. Okay, so we'll use the same criteria we used in our last video where we looked at the first. Okay, so builds towards something. So the formative
mhm.
leads to a thinking summative. And in this case, the summative that they suggested was a portfolio with a reflection.
I do think that the practice leads to the portfolio, obviously. So, yeah, does build towards.
I think that's actually really
Yeah,
strong. So what would you give it?
I think it builds towards that really well. I'd say A.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. And then the next one was internal scaffolding. So build schema, knowledge, context, frameworks.
I feel like it was kind of, I mean, it wasn't in the order that I would do it in. I think the sequence was off personally.
Yeah, agreed. And I did feel like there were a couple places where I didn't feel like there was really enough.
Mhm.
I do think at the end they will have learned sequence differently. They would have learned about the different types of found poems. But as far as I don't know, there were some other things in here. Wait, let's go back for a second at the skills that it said that we're working on.
Mm.
Ooh, close reading, diction and tone analysis, line break and enjambment, voice and perspective, and revision and reflection.
I mean, I can see where close reading like fit in there, but I don't remember that phrase used again at all. Yeah. I don't know about that one.
And there was that mini lesson or day where they were working on voice, but that was the one where we were like, we're not really sure what they're talking about here. I think that was like the voice and perspective day.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like a revision.
Uh,
Like the mini
Yeah.
lesson was completely different and like yeah, it's kind of removed.
And as far as reading different types of found poems and putting them within a tradition, I don't think that there was a lot. Well, there was really no reading of other poems
Mhm.
as examples, so not a lot of background knowledge
No.
built on that front.
No. I don't think it would go very high on this one. What do you think?
I'm thinking more like D.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and then transfer value. So the unit makes students better readers and writers beyond this text. The skills, frameworks, and habits carry forward. They leave with tools, just not just memories.
I did not see the transfer value in this. I mean, I guess it would depend on what poems I used to use as examples and what kinds of poems I asked them to come up with. But again, like I feel like that would just be like, I won a gold medal because I wrote this really cool poem. Like I feel like that's more of a memory, not a skill transfer.
Yeah, and what you just said is not even in this unit or in
Yeah.
this 5 lesson sequence. It doesn't have any
Mhm.
examples or yeah. So I think we're on the same page that that would be an F.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next part would be the next criteria is conceptual through line. So I think adapting this one, it would be organizing not just around like found poem,
Right.
but thinking about
I think if it were organized around an idea, not just a type of text, it might have more transfer value. I do
agreed.
wanna say, like,
Yeah.
going back to transfer value, I think that, we could design a better unit around this concept to where like, I don't want teachers to feel like this is why we don't do poetry because there is no transfer value. Like, there's definitely value in poetry. This unit just doesn't have it.
Yeah, agreed. And that's a really good point. I think I actually would love personally, and this is something that I have on my next year list, but to have more, well, it could even be on my rest of the year list, but to have more poetry because I do think it it does have the potential to just do what we do in novels, but just do it in a more compact
Mhm,
fashion and could have all the transfer value of a novel.
mhm. Yeah.
Okay, and then um okay, so the last one is writing is taught and not just instructed. So in this case it would be the poem creation is taught and not just constructed.
What do you think?
I think the only place where this really comes up is in that revision day.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's hard because you want like, I think with poetry, it's this balance of you want it to feel like it is I don't know how to explain it, almost like spontaneous. Like, it's just like trying to get your heart and mind out onto the paper, but also by just saying that it's like I don't wanna suggest that it's just like whatever and you, like, spell out
Yeah.
and there it is. And I feel like most of what's here is, like, spill something out and then that's it.
Mhm. I like yeah, the revision day is really the only like, this is how you do things. I agree.
So what would you grade it there on that last criteria?
What was the how was it worded?
It is writing is taught,
Mm,
not just assigned.
F.
Why don't I ever, like, write this down? I don't know where we are overall.
Okay, we had
Why don't I ever?
I didn't write it down either, but I can look back at my so builds towards something. I think we said A for that. Builds towards something well. Internal scaffolding. Is that a C or D?
I think it's a D.
Okay. Transfer value was not good. Did we say a grade for that one? It wasn't good, I know.
Oh my gosh, it wasn't good. It was either a D or an F.
And then conceptual.
I think we might not have actually said
Yeah, I
one.
don't remember one for that one. I don't think the transfer value. I would say F for that one.
And then conceptual through line, there is not one. That's an F.
Hmm.
And writing as taught is an
I
F.
agree. Yeah.
So what does that average out for you? A, D, and three Fs.
Not a good unit. I did. So I wrote my blog post for our Teaching Poetry Fest about how to like I was thinking about I don't like units like this. Like I think that and you kind of hit on it that units like this make poetry. I think you talked about it from the teacher's perspective. Like we want to make it academic. We want to make it really, meaningful, really big. But from the student's perspective, I think that this makes poetry feel very other. Like it's something that I only get to do for 1 week out of the school year. And it's just like unattainable, just other. And so I would rather throw a poem in every unit, every couple of weeks. I would rather do that as opposed to like a week-long poetry unit or a month-long poetry unit. Like, April is National Poetry Month. And I feel like you also talked about how you can teach skills in a really compact way with a poem because it is so short. Um, I wouldn't do this myself. Like, I love the idea of found poetry and I want to do it more often, but I would do it with other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see, yeah, for sure. I could see myself doing not as a 2 week unit, but maybe having found poetry being something that I would pair
Mhm.
with
Yes.
a unit, like a novel unit. So then we do it for, 6 weeks or something, or maybe even that would be something we'd work with longer. I'd be
Yeah.
thinking about like found poetry is something that we want to work with. Yeah, I agree completely. And one of the things that I have been thinking a lot about and wrote about in my blog post that I put into this poetry fest event is like to be sure as we're thinking about poetry, having that academic, but also thinking about like kind of connecting to the playful nature of poetry. And I think that when we add more of it, we feel like we have more time to be more playful, really, because we're not like, okay, now we have to teach and jam it and we need to do all those different
Yeah.
things. We can kind of space it out and have it be more, we're just gonna look at a poem today. We're just gonna put some words together and see what comes out of it and work with it over a couple days. And I think not making it, like you were saying, something that is like special, it helps to make it less elusive as well.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking uh, with me about sound poetry and our ChatGPT response.
Yeah.
All right, so we're hosting Poetry Fest, so check that out. It's gonna be really cool. We have blog hop, as we mentioned. We also have some freebies, and you can get that link in the description and in the pinned comment.
Over 20 teacher authors coming at you with ideas.
Found poetry is actually a great idea, and this gave me a lot of ideas. And I hope Allison and I working through this gave you some inspiration you can take into your classroom. We put some links in the description to help you in your classroom. So check those out. Thanks for hanging out. Until next time, keep thinking outside the script.